And we are live. Hey, Mystery Thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm so excited to welcome to the show tonight, Ginny Myers Sain, here to give us the inside scoop on her new book out tomorrow, Secrets So Deep. Ginny, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here on the eve of release, which is kind of like being somewhere, the night before a big holiday. That's kind of how it feels. So I'm really excited to be here. Secrets So Deep is out tomorrow. It is a thriller that is set at a seaside theater. So it's about a girl who has some very hazy and disjointed memories of what happened the night her mother died. And she goes back to the theater in Connecticut where that happened to try to untangle the parts of her memory that are real and the parts that are not. And then she finds out that there are a lot of things going on at Whisper Cove that blur the lines between real and not real. So she gets very tangled up in that as she searches for those answers about who her mother was. She doesn't have really memories of her mother, and particularly what happened to them both that night.
Ooh, well, I can't wait to get into every delicious detail. But first, just want to welcome everyone. So we are going live to 6 different destinations tonight. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And it is Mystery Monday. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Here's the drill. Every Monday, you get to meet my handpicked featured authors and ask them anything. So ask Ginny about, this is her second book. Ask her about writing YA versus adult, her background in theater. Ginny's joining us live from Oklahoma. What's that like? We've got a lot of things to get into, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. Leslie joining us live from Canada saying hello. Leslie,
wow.
So nice to see your name pop up. Melissa Watson joining us from Australia. Good day,
awesome.
Sarah and Ginny. Hey, Melissa. Always a pleasure to see your little baby face pop up there, that cute little puppy. And let's dive right into it. So, Ginny, this is a paranormal story. So, do you believe in ghosts?
I get that question a lot because this book and the first book that I wrote, Dark and Shallow Lies, are both set in very realistic worlds, but they have that undercurrent of the magical or the paranormal or the just a little bit strange running through them. Dark and Shallow Lies is about psychics. So there's psychic powers in that book. Secrets So Deep is very much about all the ways there are to be haunted, not just by ghosts, but by memories and things that grief and all of those things that haunt us. So I get that question a lot. Do you believe in psychics? Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in hauntings? And the truth is, I am the most skeptical person in the world about pretty much everything. So I don't really believe in it, but I say that with the little added bit that I want to believe. Like, I love the idea of it. I've always been fascinated by those stories and those, in books and movies and television. Those are the stories that I've gravitated toward. The haunted stories, I used to love like gothic horror and that sort of thing. Even when I was really little, I loved that sort of story. So even though I don't necessarily believe in it, I've always been really, really interested in it, really, really drawn to it. And I would love to believe in it. Like, I would love to find out that I'm wrong about all of that and find out that it's all out there, because I think that would be the coolest thing.
Ooh, I once had a woman tell me, I don't believe in ghosts, but I've seen 2. Caitlin. So I was literally like, how does that work? She said, well, I've seen 2, but I don't believe in them. But it's like, but
that doesn't make it hard if you've seen them. Yeah, I haven't seen one, so I would kind of like to. It would be fun.
But you have not.
I have not. No.
Okay.
I kind of feel like that about this. I feel the same way about like Bigfoot, though. I haven't seen him either, but I really want him to be out there. Like, I hope he is living his life, having a good time.
I love it. Anissa saying hello from South Carolina. Anissa, welcome to the conversation. Always great to see your name pop up. Margaret joining us from the West Coast, from Portland, Oregon, saying she loves the sound of your book, Ginny.
Yay!
Yay! Melissa says Dark and Shallow Lies is an amazing title. I am enjoying a bit of supernatural more recently. It is such a fascinating subject. Melissa, yes, it is fascinating. So I'm loving that you are appreciating that as well. Yay. Margaret saying she's joining us from Sasquatch.
Yay, Sasquatch.
I didn't know that's where the Sasquatches frolicked. Good to know. Let us know if you've had a sighting, Margaret. So Ginny, you placed this book in Connecticut, but you're in Oklahoma. Why Connecticut?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. So I always I've spent a long time directing and teaching acting. So I've been working in the theater, for pretty much all my life. And when I decided to write, I knew one of the stories I wanted to tell eventually was a theater story. That was the seed of that. So this idea of the setting and the theater, I had in my head for a long time. And I'm really drawn to setting in my stories. That the setting plays a big part in not just, as a background for the story, but as a part of the story, as sort of, forms part of the network of what makes that story work. So I wanted a good place to set it. It had to be the right place. And I worked for 6 summers in Connecticut at a seaside theater there, the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Waterford, Connecticut. And for 6 summers after I got out of college, I ran the box office there in the summers. And so it was such a cool place to be, not just because of all the amazing theater that was happening, but because for a girl from Oklahoma, Connecticut in the summer is very different from Oklahoma in the summer. No one would ever pick out Oklahoma as a place to go to in the summer if they did not have to. It's 150 degrees. It's very humid. It's miserable. But to be up there, and live literally right on the water. I'd never even seen the ocean before that. That was the first time that I'd seen the ocean. And I fell so in love with that place and just that whole, that area geographically, that whole seaside experience was such a cool thing that I went back for 6 more summers and just fell in love with it. And I've continued to go back as a visitor since then. I've taken groups of students there. I've gone to see shows there. So I just combined those 2 things. I knew I wanted to tell that theater story, and I had this theater by the sea that I loved very much. So I put a lot of that place into that story.
Ooh, it must have been such a magical experience to see the ocean for the first time.
It was really cool, especially since, I hadn't seen it before. And the night I got there, the first year that I worked in the box office there, I got there in the evening, I had to fly in and then took a train from New York and all of that. So it was quite late and it was dark. And I got up the next morning, to go to the cafeteria for breakfast to meet all my new, people I was going to be working with. And it was very foggy that morning. So I still couldn't see the water. They kept saying the water's right there and I couldn't see it. But then after lunch, when that fog burned off, it was like, whoa. I mean, that had been right. It was like right there. And I didn't even know it when I had come in the night before. So it was really cool when that finally burned off. And there was this moment of like, there it is. It was very, very cool.
It is that moment. Now, as a theater person, did you sing a chorus of
I didn't. I think I was probably, walking back from lunch and I was like, oh my gosh, they weren't lying. It is right there, I hadn't realized when they meant right there that it was like right on the water. So that was a really cool thing, it was awesome.
Oh my goodness. Ginny, let's get into some of the industry reviews of Secrets So Deep. So Kirkus calls it sorrowful, haunting, and romantic, a true page turner. So first of all, congratulations on that rave review.
Thank you. Yeah, that meant a lot to hear that. That was great.
Industry legend Kirkus. Let's talk about the components of this. So first, sorrowful, haunting, and romantic. Was this what you were trying to write, or when?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh wait, this is an aspect that I hadn't really considered.
I don't. I don't know that I sat down and thought about those words particularly, but I can say that that's kind of the overall vibe. Definitely, it is very sorrowful. The main character, she's very much at a point in her life. She's just turned 18 or 17, and she's getting ready to go off to college, and she's trying to sort of, figure out who she is and learn who she is and figure out what she wants and what she wants to do with her life. And she very much feels like she can't do that because she doesn't have this key component of it, and that's who her mother was. She's having a lot of trouble figuring that out. So definitely the sorrow of not having your mother and not having those memories. Yeah, I mean, those are three words that I definitely am glad that they picked. I think it is pretty romantic. It's maybe a little bit more romantic than my first book was. It has a little bit, there was romance in that book as well, but the romance in this book, I think, is just more kind of romantic. I guess it's definitely a big component. It feels that way. Maybe that's the theatricality of, being in the theater and all of that sort of lends that feeling to it.
Now, Ginny, this is your second book. So you were in ITW's debut class of writers last year. This is your second book. What lessons have you learned from book one to book two? How has it been different? How has it been?
The first thing that I can say honestly is that book two was much harder to write. Which I think a lot of people would think, well, you've written one, the second one will be much easier. But the second one was actually much harder. And at least I can say at this point, I've also finished a third one, and that one did get easier again. But I think just the pressure of, when you write that first one, you don't know if anybody's ever going to read it, if it's ever going to be published. You're just kind of writing what you want to write, and you're putting it out there and hoping maybe something happens. But when you get to that second one, especially if you have, as I did, a 2-book contract, that second one is coming, kind of the pressure of living up to the first book is very real, and wanting to not let people down and not disappoint people who loved that book. And will they find something to love in this book? But also, wanting to tell this story the way it needs to be told, or the way it means to be told. So there's a whole lot of pressure with that second one. And I think the main thing that I learned is how to sort of telescope my writing process. Because, that first book, again, you're on you're kind of your own timeline. You finish it when you want to finish it. You query it when you want to query it. And with that second one, it was a very, very, very tight timeline. So I learned how to still do everything I do as a writer, but maybe just kind of telescope and shrink the process down a little bit to make it more compact.
So how long did the first book take you, and how long did how much did you telescope?
So I wrote the first one in about 6 months, the first real version of it in about 6 months. And then I spent another 6 months kind of, putting it away and getting it out and polishing it, and fixing it up. And so I'd put it aside for a little bit and come back to it. So all in all total, I maybe spent a year or so working on that project before I, landed an agent and things started to move on it. The second book I wrote start to finish in about 4 months. Because that's kind of what the timeline was for getting it in, to my editor and getting it up and going, and all of that stuff.
Excellent. Let's get to some of the other praise. So, so book list, let's pull that one up. Saying Sain does a beautiful job of combining the paranormal with a page-turning mystery and intense romance, all set against the theater backdrop. A great coming-of-age tale. So let's talk about now 2 books into your career with these industry reviewers praising your ability to keep those pages flying. What have you learned about that? What do you think is the secret to your success on that?
I try to keep in mind what one of the rules that I learned early on, as a writer. There are those little nuggets of wisdom that you get at writers' conferences or meetings, and you think, oh, that's good, I'm going to hang on to that. And I remember hearing that every next page, but particularly every chapter, but every page really needs to lead to something else, so this happens and then this happens because that happened. So I try to keep that in mind as I write, so that every scene kind of propels us forward into the next scene. And as a beginning writer, you write some really beautiful scenes and you're thinking, whoa, this dialogue, oh my gosh, this is the best dialogue I've ever written. These characters are so real in this moment. I love this scene. And then, you put it away for a day or two, you come back to it and you're like, but nothing really happens in this scene. Like, it's not really propelling us in any direction. It's just a nice little scene, and it has to go, so you learn sort of, I think you get maybe braver or more willing to cut out some of your favorite little bits, if they're not in the service of keeping that plot moving.
Ooh, I like that. Anissa would like to know, who was the toughest character for you to write and why?
Yeah, so in this book, Secret So Deep, there's a character named Cole, Cole Culver. And Cole it turned out to be one of my favorite characters to write, but he was not one of my favorite characters to write in the beginning. He was very difficult. And I know by now that when I have a lot of difficulty writing a scene or writing a character's scenes, I can't really get a handle on it. I know that it's because I haven't figured out the core of that character yet, or what the kernel of what makes them them. And once I find that, then I can write those scenes really easily. So I know if I'm struggling, that's probably what it is. It goes back to character. And Cole was very hard for me to pin down, because I wasn't sure exactly what he wanted or what his motives were. And once I really sort of worked through that, then I felt like I got him. He also had the wrong name early on. And people always ask about names in my books, because I do have some unusual names, both in Dark and Shallow Lies. And then in this one, not so much this one, but also as well, some unusual names. And I get asked that, and they say, how do you find names? Do you look up names? I know some writers use like baby lists and that kind of thing. And my characters just come to me named. Like when they create themselves in my head, they have a name, just like they have a personality or a background, a history. And I was calling him by the wrong name for a long time. And once I realized that wasn't his name, that I knew what his name was, it was much easier for me to write that character. I know that sounds strange, but that's the way it happens.
So what was his name?
Well, his name first was Riley, which is just not his name at all. Like, not his name. And I was trying to make it be his name. And he was like, that is not who I am. I'm not going to let you write me as a Riley. That's not who I want to be. And so once I changed it, no offense to anyone named that. It's a great name. I mean, I liked it. That's why I was going to use it. But he was like, nope, that's not me. And once I knew who he was, then I could write it.
Riley was on strike. He was not showing up for work.
Yes.
He stopped calling him Riley.
And that's the only time that's really happened to me, where I'm just like, wow, I didn't know who this character was. And now I do. So.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Margaret saying, what about those scenes where you're writing the beautiful exposition or the beautiful dialogue, but it is not, as you said, in service to the story?
Right.
Do you keep those scenes for extras?
Sometimes I keep them for a while. I keep them and sometimes I'll pull things from them. I have a folder that's kind of like a cut folder, where I put the things that I'm taking out, because if there's especially if there's a line that I really love, or just a bit of characterization that I really love, I'll see if maybe there's another place I can work those in, or if there's another way to use them in the story. And a lot of times those things do get recycled. So yeah, I do tend to hang on to them, at least until I'm sure that there's no place for them to go.
I liked how you said in service of the scene. I like that, or in service of the story.
Yes, yeah.
I like that perspective. Melissa saying, yes, propelling each scene forward, that energy, that propelling. I love that. Me too, Melissa.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for chiming in. Anissa wants to know, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, I get that question a lot too. And the truth is I'm a little bit of both. I'm kind of a plotting pantser, or a pantsing plotter, I guess. I tend to, I plot out the big points. The points that the whole story hinges on, those major points of change, or the pinch points, as they call them in the story. I know what those major things are. I don't plot out the minor things. So I know, for instance, what A is, and I know what B is, but I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get from A to B. Those are the things that I kind of make up as I go along, because I've got this very skeletal outline of the big things. So that leaves me some freedom to play with those small things. And I always say it's kind of like I'm going on vacation, and I know what city I'm going to visit. So I know like what the weather is and what clothes to pack, and what things to take, but I haven't figured out exactly like where I'm going to have dinner or which museums I'm going to go to. I've just made like the big decisions and going to wing it for everything else.
Anissa is suggesting a plotzer.
I like that. I think that's better than plantser. So I think much better.
I'm loving it. Margaret, I'm wondering, what about newsletter gold for all those cut scenes?
Right. I need to do that. Yes, I need a newsletter. I'm going to work on that. That's a good idea. Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Anissa, let's dive into the process a little more. So we're talking about this Riley turned Cole.
Yes.
Plotting, the pantsing, the plotzing. What is your relationship with your characters? Do your characters lead you, or do you lead them? Great question, Anissa.
That is a good question. I think I probably lead them until they tell me that I've led them in the wrong direction. And then I let them stop me and turn me around and take me back and get me back on track, which is something that has happened, particularly with the character of Cole, like we were just discussing. And that's the one that's happened most with. I definitely have an idea of where I want them to go. And if they're going willingly with me, then I know that that's the right direction, like for all of us to be moving and things are good. But if I feel like I am dragging them along behind me, kicking and screaming, that's my clue that, something is not working. I need to go back and listen to the characters and figure out what it is that they're trying to do here.
Yeah, if they're going willingly, I just had this vision of you in a kidnap-mobile.
Like, come on.
Yeah. For you, little Riley. I mean, Cole, get in the van.
And if they refuse to get in the van, then I know that I need to try something different because this is not working.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So speaking of bringing with you, so how has your real life career, your other career, as a theater person, has it influenced or not influenced your writing? Are you thinking of drama? Are you thinking of scenes?
Yeah, I think they both. I think probably my theater experience has definitely informed my writing and changed it in huge ways. I don't know, we're not doing theater right now the way we have been for a long time. We're just starting to get back into things, after COVID and all of that. So I haven't done a lot of theater lately. I miss it a lot. I'd love to do more of that. But I know that my experience as a teacher and an acting teacher and a director definitely informs the way that I write. I feel like I write in sort of a visual way. I try to set the scenes very visually, and I see it, oddly enough, not as a movie, but as a play on stage. I get that question too. Do you see it as a movie or do you not? I'm like, actually, I see it as a play, which I know is a little specific, but that's just how I see the movement of it and all of that and keep it in my head.
Now, Ginny, what kind of theater are we talking? Are we talking musical theater? I mean,
oh yeah, I've done musical theater. I've taught and directed musical theater. Definitely, I do love musical theater. Straight plays are really what I love. I mean, musicals are a lot of fun, and I've done a whole lot of musicals, and I love musicals. But I really love plays. I've always loved plays since I was little.
So, what's your favorite musical theater show?
Well, I was just talking about this earlier with my friend who came into town for my book launch stuff. And we had been listening to a lot of musical theater and we were listening to Rent. And he was like, "This is your favorite, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yes, I think it is." And I've always loved that show. But part of it is because I saw the original cast perform it on Broadway right after it opened, and I was just in college, and everything was so exciting. And it was such a different show to see. And that there's a lot of nostalgia tied up in those songs and that story and that particular moment in time for me. So I love that one.
So I've never seen Rent, but isn't that the one where it's like 5,000, where they're counting the days or
yes,
the hours?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Ginny, can you sing? Could you be persuaded to sing us a line?
I definitely could not. But I appreciate the offer and the microphone.
Are you a singer?
For everyone's benefit, I'm going to turn that offer down. But thank you.
Are you a singer? Or just
I sing, but I'm not. I definitely wouldn't say I was a singer. But I definitely do sing under the right circumstances.
Interesting. All right, you guys, the book is out tomorrow. Secrets So Deep, out tomorrow. So here is the link to pre-order it tonight. So we have, let's see, it's 8:30 here on the East Coast, so 7:30 in Oklahoma. So we have 3.5 hours on the East Coast, 4.5 hours where Ginny is until this book drops. So
oh my goodness, you're right. Wow. Whoa.
Now, here's the link. I'm going to pop it into the comments. So pre-order the book right now, and the good folks at Murder by the Book will ship you your copy tomorrow. After it comes out in just a few hours. So no matter where you're watching from, YouTube or Facebook, here is that link. And for all our friends on Facebook, here is that. So pre-order it, and in just a few short hours, you could have your copy on the way as well. School Library Journal raves that nocturnal wanderings and paranormal events add an extra layer of mystery to the twists and turns, atmospheric and thoroughly engrossing. Congratulations on that, rave.
Thank you.
I'll pull that one up right here from the School Library Journal. All right, everybody, we have 4 minutes left, so I think I can take another 2 or so questions. So if you have any questions left for Ginny, get them going in the comments. I'll get them right over to her. And I do let people submit questions in advance in Mystery and Thriller Mavis. We have a few of those I'd like to get to as well.
Very good.
I'm going to pop the first one up, this one from Jenny, and she would like to know what your best advice is for an aspiring young writer.
Okay, so I know that we all kind of get the same advice when we ask those questions. So I'm going to throw something at you that you may not have heard before. And my advice, particularly for writing good dialogue, if you want to write really good dialogue in your novel or your short story, whatever you're working on, my best advice is to read plays. Read scripts of plays. That's all playwrights have is dialogue. They don't get internal character monologue. They don't get scene setting. They don't get any of that. So my advice is always, if you want to improve your dialogue game, get scripts and read plays and learn how to write really economic but really powerful dialogue.
Oh, that is interesting because you're right. A lot of the same advice does get bandied around. Make sure that you're reading a lot.
Yes,
Sure
absolutely.
Putting yourself out there, all of which, of course, are very important. I hadn't heard this particular piece of advice, and I'll be the first to admit I've never read a play. So, which play should a person start with?
That totally depends on what it is you're writing. If you're writing something particularly for that purpose, to study dialogue and the way playwrights use dialogue, I would try to find something that correlates with the kind of story you're writing. If you're writing a very contemporary play, there are a lot of great plays out there. One of the things that I like to do is look back at Tony Award winners and other award winners for the last 5-10 years, and just kind of look those up and see what might match your tone or your style or your setting. I love Tennessee Williams, and I grew up in the South and with Southern characters, so I love the way he writes dialogue, particularly for Southern characters. The cadence of it and the rhythm of it feels really familiar to me, having grown up. I think, I know these people, I know these voices. So if you can find something that will kind of go along with what you're writing and the style you write in. There's so many good plays out there. Everybody should read more plays.
That is so interesting to think about sharpening dialogue through the reading of plays. I like that advice. Melissa saying that is very interesting. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
I totally agree, Melissa. Really, and not something that not just the sim advice. So
right.
That is very cool to hear. This one from Robert asking, Do you have another book in the works already?
I do. And up until yesterday, I couldn't have said much about it, but now I can. I do have another book, a third book, that's called One Last Breath. Although that may change because the announcement has just come out. And that one is another thriller with some paranormal elements and some other sort of magic woven through it. And it's about two divers, free divers, who feel a connection to a murder that happened in that location, but 20 years ago. And there's some connections between those characters in the past and present. So it's hopefully as another sort of spooky, scary, creepy, along the first line as the first two.
And will that be a YA as well, Ginny?
Yes, it'll be the YA. I might write something else eventually. Right now, I'm really happy in the YA space. Most of the teaching and directing I did for all of those years, I worked really, really closely with teenagers, particularly teenagers who really were intent on pursuing like professional experiences in the theater or college theater programs. So I loved those kids. I heard those are the voices that I felt like I knew the best, and I just heard them all the time in my head anyway. So I knew when I wanted to start to write that's the age range I wanted to write for. So I'm pretty happy there.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it seems like you also have an interest and fascination with paranormal, with magic, and with things from the past impacting.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
What's that? What do you think that's about?
I don't know. I think that part, when I've told people that I can trace it back to when my mother and father, I asked for a Weeble Circus for Christmas when I was 4. I wanted this Weeble Circus desperately, like, because when you pulled it back, it would fire the little Weeble out of the cannon, and there was like a trapeze, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. I have to have this Weeble Circus. Well, for Christmas that year, they were sold out of Weeble Circuses in the small town where I lived. There were no Weeble Circuses available, but one store happened to have a Weeble's Haunted House. So what I got instead of a Weeble Circus was a Weeble's Haunted House that made ghost sounds, and there was all these crazy like creaking noises, and the characters were witches and goblins, and I fell in love with it. And if they had gotten me a circus, I might be sitting here talking to someone about trapeze artistry. But they didn't. They got me a haunted house, and I fell in love with all the things spooky and creepy and all that. So here we are. It's the Weebles. That's all I can say.
Oh my gosh. I feel like you should include the Weebles in your acknowledgement.
I should have, now that you're mentioning that, and I feel a little bad. So y'all feel free to write them in, put the Weebles in the acknowledgements for me. I left them out.
Oh my gosh. I'm picturing you loading a little Weeble cannon and just
I know. Yeah.
little Weebles. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Leslie saying I had one of those little Weeble haunted houses. They're so much fun. I'm gonna have to look this up because I actually don't even know what a Weeble is. But
it's so cool. You're gonna want one too, and they're very expensive on eBay. I've looked. We're talking like $300.
Wait, so, you don't still have yours?
I don't. No, and that's it's one of those things. Like if I had known, I would have kept it. But hindsight,
I guess. God, your lifelong dream of writing spawned by the Weebles, and you don't even have the Weeble anymore.
I know. That's the irony of it.
Oh my gosh, Leslie, thank you for sharing that you also
Thank you. I love that, Leslie.
Weeble haunted house survivor. All right, y'all, we are out of time, but I want to remind you the book is out tomorrow. So here again is the link. So click and pre-order. We have just a few hours until the book drops. So exciting. And then our friends at Murder by the Book will pop it in the mail to you tomorrow. So here's that link. Ginny, congratulations on Secret So Deep launching in just a few hours.
So much.
And book number 3 coming announced to me yesterday. So much exciting things going on in the world of Ginny Myers Sain, and we're here for every delicious detail.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yay! All right, y'all, that is a wrap on Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Monday. Take good care until then.
Bye.